Joining us now is New York Times Kyiv Bureau Chief Andrew Kramer. Andrew, great to speak with you, and set the table for us as we look ahead to this meeting next week. There have been a series of conversations, if not formal meetings, at these international summits. What do you expect to come out of that meeting in Washington should they get together next week?
Well, thank you very much for having me on, and I apologize for some of the connection problems here. The peace talks essentially stalled even before the Iran war began. For months now, we've had back-channel conversations, but no real progress. It would be an important step if at this meeting, which is scheduled for next week, we see a suggestion that these talks could move forward with probably the central issue being control of the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, just as it was in February when they broke off last time.
Has there been any movement there from Zelensky? I mean, I remember a year or two ago it was, we're going to fight for every inch of territory. Has realism come to Kyiv in the fact that Ukraine does seem to have some momentum at this time, and maybe if they're willing to settle, they know that they can end this? Or is that still not something they're willing to talk about out loud?
Well, I think the issue is Ukraine will fight as it has no choice. The issue is, when will Russia settle the war? Country with larger territory, more population, more resources. The talks had held up over a formula for joint political control of the still Ukrainian-controlled portion of the Donbas region, and Putin had insisted and has said publicly that they won't stop fighting until they control this area. And neither side has accepted the compromise of joint control. So I think that right now the war is moving in Ukraine's favor. The momentum and initiative is on Ukraine's side. We have multiple strikes in Russia almost every day, as well as strikes in Ukraine, and the front line has not moved now for months. So the representation had been last fall, the Russian representation, that the Donbass would be captured within 7 or 8 months. This was taken on board by some of on the U.S. side at the meeting in Anchorage and afterward, but that time has now elapsed, and there's been no movement. So it's unclear that Russia could achieve these goals militarily. It's been trying to capture this area for more than 10 years, since 2014, and has not achieved that militarily. There's a window of about 6 months, the Ukrainians believe, while their technological advantage at this stage is still effective before Russia is able to catch up with that. So that's where we're at. It's really a window of Ukrainian advantage, and whether that can be translated into a settlement to stop the war.
Andrew, I want to ask you sort of where we're at in terms of what the fight looks like. And so we've seen reporting by you and others about the way that Ukraine is targeting sites in Russia now, energy sites in particular, in Moscow, St. Petersburg. I was struck listening to Greg Myrie of NPR, who's done a lot of tours of duty in Ukraine, talking about how it's perilous now in Ukraine to go to a gas station to fill up your car, that these are being targeted as well. What does the war look like on the ground today in terms of sort of how it's being prosecuted, excuse me?
Sure. I'm in Zaporizhia, which is in southern Ukraine. It's a city which is often targeted for being closer to the front line. And there are really two wars. There's the battle for control of territory, and there's the air war. And because the ground war has been essentially stalled for more than 2 years now, but really ground to a halt six months or so ago, it's becoming an air war, and both sides are hitting critical infrastructure, military targets, energy sites. So I was just here in Zaporizhia this morning, and we had glide bombs. We had 3 glide bombs come in and target an industrial area of the city. And every other gas station in this town, I think, is blown up. So it's really a long-range attritional warfare using these types of long-range drones and airplanes, and a question of which side can hold out longer. Now, Russia is larger; it has a larger economy and more resources. But there are ways in which this is a disadvantage as well. There's asymmetry because Russia has more of a developed economy. It also has more things that can be broken, that can be blown blown up by Ukrainian drones. So it has more to lose in this battle. Ukraine has also adapted over 4 years, and the strikes on Russia really only got rolling in a significant way for about a year now. The oil port of Novorossiysk, for example, is now closed. Is 1 million barrels of oil a day exported through there. About a quarter of Russia's refining capacity is destroyed. But just in the last week or so, we had 150 ships were targeted. Russian ships were targeted in the Black Sea. So they have a lot that can be damaged if this goes on.
You're seeing, it seems suddenly, last month or so, this penetration by Ukraine into Russia further and further, targeting these sites. Is that a progression of the technology? Is that a progression of where they feel they are politically and diplomatically, that this is now an acceptable thing that Europe and even the U.S. to some extent will not punish them for? Or is it a little bit of a combination of both?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. It's largely technological. These are Ukrainian-made munitions. They don't need to ask permission to use these. And it's also a function of geometry. If you look at the map, Ukraine is on the inside of a circle, essentially, and Russia is on the outside of a circle. So once you get past the front line, you're moving into ever and ever larger territories in Russia that are impossible to defend with their defenses, because it's not even you travel an extra 100 miles, you double the range of your drone, you're covering 4 times as much territory. It's an exponential expansion of the territory that needs to be defended by air defenses. And the opposite is true when weapons are coming into a more confined area. So there's an actual geographic advantage in the battlefield, and they're reaching out to ever deeper areas in Russia that are essentially undefendable. There was a strike on 2 men recently, which is in Siberia. They've hit the Omsk refinery, so the ranges are out well over 1,000 miles, and it's a combination of technological advantage and also relying on their own weaponry rather than donated weaponry where there are restrictions.
They have limits, yeah.
Andrew, the minute we have left, I just want to ask you about President Trump's attitude toward the war and toward President Zelensky as well. And Laura Loomer, noted conspiracy theorist, occasional Pentagon correspondent, and Trump whisperer.
MAGA influencer, yeah.
All of that. In Ukraine recently, sat down with Ukrainian media and offered an apology. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
And I feel really terrible for some of the things that I've said. So I would like to apologize on your show to the people of Ukraine for some of the things that I've said about your country, because they've been very kind to me, and I highly doubt that I would be welcomed in Moscow.
An astonishing about-face there from Laura Loomer, which gets me to the other about-face that we've seen from President Trump. So certainly at the NATO summit, the G7 before that, we had President Trump really sounding a more positive note about Ukraine. Again, in the minute we have left here, your assessment just about the U.S. and his engagement with the war now as we see it.
Well, I think Russia has dominated some of the diplomacy for the past year or so, but Ukraine is working hard to make inroads with the MAGA influencers, with the Republican Party in the United States, and that visit to Ukraine, I don't think should be underestimated. That was an important step and accomplishment for Ukraine to win over an important voice in President Trump's movement. There's also been the actual battlefield shifts have favored Ukraine, and I think this is changing the opinion of changing the views of members of the Trump administration.